Hello, and welcome to the Pit Strategy Podcast. I'm your host, Jeff, and along with my co-host, Matt, we just want to welcome you to our in-depth analysis of the last Formula One race of the 2023 season, the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. For those of you new to this, welcome. We are new to this as well. I am a bandwagon Formula One fan that just got into it at the beginning of the year, like a lot of fans at the moment. Getting into it via Netflix's Drive to Survive series. Tuned in somewhere around the Zandvoort Dutch Grand Prix and have just been utterly obsessed with this sport and the racing and the drivers and the teams ever since. Just excited to talk about it and learn a little bit more about the sport, what all it entails, and just the technical side of things. And I'm eager to welcome my co-host to the show, Matt.
Hello.
Welcome.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm excited to do this. You kind of dragged me into F1 kicking and screaming, but
you're a former IndyCar and NASCAR fan.
But yeah, NASCAR. I grew up on NASCAR during the Jeff Gordon era. I don't even know how I got into NASCAR because I was so young and grew up watching Jeff. I eventually became a Jimmy Johnson fan before he started winning championships. But kind of fell out of it when they started making a lot of rule changes, especially around the playoff era. I think what was it called, the Sprint for the Cup?
Sure.
Back in that day, they lost a lot of fans because of those rule changes. And I've always loved motorsport. I've always appreciated things that go fast.
Sure.
So when you were talking to me about F1, and it was just a natural rabbit hole for me to fall into.
Absolutely. I mean, anything that goes 200 plus miles an hour is just immediately the gravitational black hole that just captivates people. And you throw in all the drama of the drivers and the teams and just everything that happens off track as well as on, and it becomes this silly, ridiculously compelling and intensive thing.
It's a soap opera with an adrenaline rush attached to it.
It really is. It's better than most daytime television. Let's be realistic. So.
That's one thing that I've really come to appreciate from F1 compared to NASCAR, but at least when I was watching it, was that I don't know whether it's thanks to internet culture and meme culture now, but when I was watching NASCAR, there wasn't as much behind the scenes shenanigans as there is with F1 right now.
Oh, sure.
And I know that a lot of it is, the social media teams trying to get the drivers to do silly stuff. But I don't know. I guess I just appreciate the effort that a lot of the teams are doing to draw the fans in and give them something that's not racing. But, I guess it just makes it more involved for everybody.
Oh, sure. And yeah. Drive to Survive, I think, has done a real good job of showcasing what the drivers go through, what the team principals go through, and like you said, combining that with social media and just some of the drivers' personalities. Like some of these drivers' personalities are just geared for a public face. Like I don't think the sport would be as popular as it is, especially in the United States, as it is without the likes of like Danny Ricciardo.
I was going to say, Ricciardo brought in a huge amount of. The younger generation loves Ricciardo.
Oh, of course.
He's just got that magnetic personality.
He's very much a showman. I could definitely see him ending up in the commentary box whenever he decides to hang up the helmet.
Yeah, he's got a future there for sure.
Absolutely. All right, well, we're going to roll with that right into the first segment of the show, the Dispatch, where we go over just the latest headlines from the Formula One world and, just the news, as it were. And we're going to start off talking about the AlphaTauri rebrand. Obviously, Red Bull Racing's junior team. They were scheduled to announce who their new title sponsor was going to be somewhere between the Austin and Mexico Grand Prix and radio silence.
Right.
Haven't heard anything about it, at least on like an official scale. I know Red Bull Racing leaked, in air quotes, the name the Racing Bulls as their potential team.
Yeah.
The internet was not happy.
No, yeah, I don't think I've talked to a single person that likes it. Like just there's some people that are kind of giving it a chance, or at least trying to, but I don't I can't think of a single person that I've talked to or read comments from that genuinely likes the name.
I would agree. And I mean, especially the little logo type, it's half of the Red Bull logo. It just looks like I don't know, looks like you weren't even trying.
Right, that seemed a little demeaning to me. And then I'm sorry, but the name Racing Bulls just sounds so effortless. It almost it's almost like Mickey Mouse got a hold of Red Bull and made like a kiddie version. It's like Disney Kids, but F1. It's almost Racing Bulls.
Or they stuck into Chat GPT and just said, come up with something similar to Red Bull, but not exact.
I know, and this like this is not the first time that they've done this. Toro Rosso is literally just Red Bull in Italian, but it's in Italian. That's why it sounds good.
Sure, and their color scheme and everything was different than Red Bull. It was very iconic.
It wasn't. It was close. It was close to Red Bulls, but it wasn't too far off that you could still tell the difference. And AlphaTauri even more so. I honestly like the white and blue.
I do too. I think it looks really, really good, especially out on track. I didn't really care for their
the zebra car,
the zebra fingerprint logo that they ran. But that was at Vegas
and Abu Dhabi.
Vegas and Abu Dhabi.
Yeah,
and it was all. I don't know.
It was. I think their fashion department got a hold of the whatever they used to design the paint schemes for the car. It just slipped it in.
Definitely. So yeah, I would like something better than the Racing Bulls. I honestly think they should just bring Toro Rosso back. People liked that. It was very popular. I mean, it evokes the time when Toro Rosso was cranking out championship drivers. I mean, you have all of the early great Red Bull drivers that came out of Toro Rosso, and even some that are still on the grid today, like Pierre Gasly and Alex Albon. They were Toro Rosso drivers.
Yeah.
So I think it'd just be good to bring it back, personally.
I agree. I don't see how you can go wrong with bringing it back. It's going to be that the old F1 fans are going to love it, and the new F1 fans, mostly Americans, are going to say, oh, that sounds cool. Sounds better than Racing Bulls. Let's go with that.
Sure. It sounds exotic, like all things that you put in Italian do.
Exactly.
So on a similar note, we also haven't heard anything out of Alfa Romeo and their eventual change to Audi this next year.
Yeah.
Did pretty much radio silence on that point. They re-signed Valtteri Bottas and Zhou Guanyu for the next season. So the drivers are secure regardless of what happens, but Audi spent a ridiculous amount of money on a factory and meeting up with the new engine regs, and season's over. We haven't heard anything about it.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything either. I'm curious, like, we know that Audi this is their debut in F1. They've never been a part of a team in the past or anything. So rally is where they've always dominated.
Right.
Where they've had a huge presence. So I'm curious if they'll kind of tap into those color schemes that they've used in rallies in the past, or, some of that marketing and branding, and just, copy and paste to F1, or if they're going to try something completely different. Because they did reveal a quote unquote paint scheme.
Right.
The black and red.
Right.
That I think looks really sleek, but I'm worried it might be too close to Mercedes.
It does look very Mercedes.
It's very close. It's not a glossy black like Mercedes. It's more of a carbon fiber.
Right.
But I don't know if that's going to be enough.
Yeah.
It looks cool. I like it, but I don't know. It's still all up in the air anyways.
Right. And it's also going to be very determinant on since we have one more year to go before the engine regulations change, what significant contribution Audi is going to have to the team itself, beyond just a stylistic one, because they can't bring in a whole new Audi designed engine yet.
Right.
So they're probably still going to be using whatever engines they were previously using. So yeah, I don't know what the Audi influence is going to be in 2024. I feel like we won't see much of it until 2025. But I just wish somebody would get up on a stage and say, "This is it." Here's the thing. And I mean, I guess none of the teams have really revealed their 2024 cars yet in the first place. But it's like, still, they've been talking about this for months, and we haven't heard or seen anything.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it will happen. I am curious if they'll maybe kind of bundle this team branding reveal, along with bringing up a new driver like Théo Pourchaire.
It's possible, I suppose.
he's well connected with Alfa Romeo. He performed pretty well at FP1.
Well, and he just won the F2 championship.
Exactly. Yeah. So I don't know if I wouldn't. It wouldn't be too far-fetched, in my opinion, to see an Audi reveal along with the new face of Audi being a rookie driver, along with a really experienced one like Valtteri.
Yeah, I could definitely see that, especially since Zhou's results for most of the season have been very lackluster.
Right. He only outqualified Valtteri once.
I believe so,
yeah.
Yes.
If I remember right.
Right, and that's dangerous territory to be in when you've got someone like Valtteri who was, you give that man a considerable car like he had when he was with Mercedes, and it's just, they'll blow the doors off most people.
Sure, so. Yeah. Yeah, you give him a good car, he'll perform, and he's performing with a not-so-good car, so.
Obviously, yeah. Yeah, Alpha's definitely struggled in that arena this past season. It was very evident, especially in the later half of the year, it seemed like.
Sure. I did like their Vegas paint scheme, though.
It was a very cool paint scheme. Everybody really pulled out all the stops for the Vegas Grand Prix for Big Nos. Theirs was, I think, definitely my favorite of the Vegas liveries.
Yeah. Which one was your least favorite?
Honestly, I gotta say the Red Bull one.
Yeah, you didn't like the purple?
I didn't really care for the purple. I'm not a purple guy, so.
Okay, fair. I liked it fine. I can't really think of one that I didn't just straight up say I don't like this. Even like AlphaTauri's, I was like, oh, that's a little out there, but okay, that's kind of cool. Ferraris looked really classic to me. It didn't seem too busy. I did find it kind of funny that, not officially, but there were a lot of McLaren fans saying that McLaren had a paint scheme when they really didn't.
They really didn't.
Yeah, no. I did like their paint scheme for Abu Dhabi, though. That was a cool touch.
Yeah. Well, and McLaren only had half a paint scheme in Vegas after Norris put it into the wall.
Yeah,
but we won't talk about that. So, speaking of teams, given your background with IndyCar and NASCAR and that entire world, what are your thoughts on Andretti Racing and attempting to enter Formula One as the 11th team?
I say let's do it. I mean, I get that a lot of the teams are against it because of prize money and all that fun political stuff. But this is not the first time you would have more than 20 cars on the grid.
Correct.
So fight harder.
Do better.
Exactly. Just get good. Because I think that it could open so many new avenues and draw even more American fans into F1. Having another American team that's got a huge name behind it in motorsports, and having General Motors as their engine provider could really shake the game up.
I would agree.
Having somebody from, out of left field that's not a regular provider.
Right, like a random, what do they call it? What did they call them back in the days? The privateer teams, just some billionaire with a lot of money that just wants to get into the sport for ego reasons.
Yeah, so it could either be really good or really bad.
Sure.
But both are entertaining. I
mean, kind of like you were saying, if you only look at it from the money standpoint, I mean, General Motors has been, participating in NASCAR and IndyCar for, decades.
A long time.
Yeah. A long time, and clearly making money off of it. They know how to do racing. They know how to do motor racing from a profitability standpoint. So I don't see how a team backed by General Motors would fail in Formula One. Even if they were dead last, you still get prize money. You can still do this and turn it around given enough time. And then, like you said, with a name like Andretti, I mean, there's I don't know many American racing fans who don't know the name Andretti.
Mm-hmm, for sure.
Whether it's the current generation or, the great granddaddy of it all.
Right. Like I said, I grew up on NASCAR during the Jeff Gordon era when he was really dominant, and John Andretti was a huge name. He didn't perform very well, but everybody knew who the Andrettis were thanks to him.
Sure.
That's how I knew who the Andrettis were.
Absolutely. Well, and before Logan Sargent scored his first points in the last half of the season, and Andretti was the last American to score points in Formula One.
Yeah.
So it just Yeah, it would be a nice return to form for that family to get back into the world champion.
They want their legacy back.
They do want their legacy back. All right, and with that, I think we're going to roll into our next segment, the debrief, where we're going to discuss all of the shenanigans that happened at the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, Yas Marina Circuit, and everything that went down there.
All right.
Let's start with the free practices. All of the rookies got their 5 minutes of fame.
It was curious to watch.
It was curious to watch, especially considering that they had the support races going the same weekend.
Yeah, they were busy.
They were super busy. Who were they saying? Oliver Behrman, when he was with Haas.
Yeah.
He was doing the free practice with Haas and then getting out of the cart and immediately going to qualify.
He was literally jumping the pit wall to get into his F2 car.
To get into his F2 car to go qualify for Formula 2. So, yeah. I mean, these guys were just all over the track. I think it was. There were several of them.
I think there were several of them.
Yeah. But they all looked really good. Teo Pourchaire, obviously.
Yeah.
Formula
Lance
2.
Stroll should be scared right now.
He absolutely should be scared.
Yeah.
Pretty much every rookie out there had his number.
Yeah. I'm not trying to talk crap about Stroll because he actually performed pretty well in these last few Grand Prix.
He really has.
But the way Drugovich showed him up in Alonso's seat should make Stroll shake in his boots a little bit.
Yes.
I don't know how far Daddy's money is going to go to keep Stroll in his seat when...
Well, especially since Daddy was selling off shares of the Aston Martin team.
Exactly. Like, you can almost see Drugovich just kind of like staring down Lance's shoulder. I'm coming for you.
Yeah, screw up just once. Well, I think there was a lot of people, because Stroll had that really bad crash in Singapore. Mm-hmm. That totaled him out pretty bad. And a lot of people thought he was going to get benched.
Yeah.
Whether or not... the mechanics for Aston Martin were going to be able to rebuild that car. He sustained quite a bit of whiplash from that wreck, and everybody thought that for safety reasons the FIA might bench him. Yeah. And Felipe was going to potentially get his first Grand Prix start out there, which obviously didn't happen. But that man was absolutely ready for it. You could just see him there in the garage, just jumping up and down, getting all hyped. And
drooling a little bit,
making sure his helmet fit properly so he could go out there and do it. But unfortunately it hasn't happened. But like I said, Stroll is definitely had better be careful.
Yeah.
In fact, a lot of the lower level team drivers had better be careful because there are some very talented
drivers.
There's
a lot of talent.
I was really impressed with Pat O'Ward for McLaren.
He did well.
He did very well as well. And Robert Schwartzman for Ferrari as well.
Red Bull kind of flexed a little bit, putting two test drivers on track, and what was with the dust on the last turn? It looked like somebody threw baby powder onto that last turn.
It really did. It was a bit of a mess back there. I'm not entirely sure what happened. I mean, you have a desert circuit right next to the coast. Wind's going to bring in all kinds of stuff. But
sure, yeah. But it was comforting to see that it wasn't just the rookie drivers that were having problems with it.
Also true. Very much true. And you could tell, there was a couple of them sitting on the pit walls. One Max Verstappen, just like, hey, don't go out there and wreck my car.
Yeah.
I need that for tomorrow.
Well, I would argue Max probably didn't need it. But
that's true. When you've got the Constructors and Drivers' Championships in the bag.
Maybe his ego needed it.
Verstappen? Have an ego?
Nah.
No.
I read that somebody crunched a whole bunch of numbers and figured out that Max could have taken, like after the summer break, he could have just said, I'm done for the season, and still win by 1 point.
Oh, good grief.
That he's just built different, man.
Is he built different or is the car built different?
I think he's built different because, other people have made this comparison, but Checo can't get the same performance out of the RB19 that Max can. There's just something about... I'm not trying to make Max sound mythical or anything like that, but he can just get something out of that car that Checo can't.
That's fair. And we have had a whole season to see that. It's going to be very interesting to see what the first quarter of the races of 2024 look like.
Sure.
And see what Max does with whatever the next. Are they calling it the RB20? Is that what they're calling it?
I don't know. I would assume so.
So whatever the 2024 Red Bull car is.
I can imagine that they're going to try and make that thing as close to the RB19 as they possibly can. Like, change as little as possible. Like, these used to be Phillips head screws. Now they're flat heads. So, like, that kind of thing.
Well, I mean, you got to do something. You got to do some sort of big R&D process there, because Mercedes and McLaren are coming after you. They're going to copy every little detail that they can, so you got to do something.
Sure. At the same time, though, if it works, it works.
It's true.
Sometimes upgrades do not always work, and Aston Martin at Brazil was a prime example of that.
And also Haas and Austin.
Yeah.
Just like, these upgrades are absolute garbage.
Exactly. It was Aston Martin also that downgraded, right? It wasn't just Haas?
As far as I know, yes. Yeah, they were the only two teams that publicly stated they were reverting back to their earlier...
Yeah, and Alonso made it work.
Made it work. And Stroll came back here in the last little bit, was making it work. So whatever it was, they were doing something. But back to Abu Dhabi. Crashes. Poor Carlos Sainz.
Dude. I don't know if it's just a Ferrari curse or what.
It's hard to know. I mean, after the debacle that was the manhole cover or whatever it was in Vegas, dang near cutting his car in half, and then literally putting the whole side of it into the wall there. Was it turn 1, turn 2 there at Abu Dhabi?
Mm-hmm.
It was pretty bad.
The luck is just so bad at Ferrari. I don't think it's just a driver issue. Like, I mean, clearly it's not. But part of it is, though.
I would agree. And I think there's just a lot. This season was full of a lot of upheaval for Ferrari. I mean, you bring in an entire new team principal, Fred Vasseur, coming from Alfa Romeo. So he doesn't know the team. The drivers don't know him. Neither of these drivers have ever driven for him. There's also a lot of pressure on the Ferrari team, being a big national team for the Italians. I feel like there's probably more pressure on them from a national standpoint than probably any other team. So you have that to compete with, and just everything with it. And then going into a season that is very much being dominated by Red Bull and McLaren as well, and just having that dynamic of all of these variables. Someone's going to be the unlucky guy left on the back foot the entire time, and I feel like Ferrari, just because I feel like they had more variables than everybody else, and that just did not play into their hand very well. I feel like next year you've got an entire season under your belt, a season that you did well in, all things considered.
P3. I mean, that's nothing to sneeze at.
The only person to take a podium that wasn't a Red Bull was a Ferrari. Carlos Sainz and all of that, and then Charles Leclerc with 22 poles, 23. Whatever it was. But
like career polls?
No, for the season. 22, right?
I'm drawing a blank, but that sounds right.
20 plus polls in a season. That's ridiculous. That's a lot of polls.
Yeah.
Like, that guy knows how to qualify.
He knows how to qualify.
He knows how to qualify.
So he can make those soft tires sink.
So we've got all of the stuff that's working in their favor. But yeah, luck definitely played a difficult role in it, but with all of that,
their strategy could use a little work,
especially when you've got your lead driver out there.
Your driver's doing your work for you,
calling an audible like, let Perez pass me. How far between me and Russell? And all of that.
I mean, props to him for trying.
Hey, he had to try.
He did the big brain move. It just didn't really work out. Which again comes back to luck.
It does, a lot of luck there. Which also comes into like speaking of Leclerc and Verstappen, that first laps of that race. I mean, it was like through lap 7, they were just fighting, scrapping it out over there.
I was confused though, because I wasn't. The commentary box noted this too, but it looked like Leclerc was letting Max go a couple of times in that fight, at least in the opening laps. Like 1 and 2.
I heard, or I think I read somewhere, that he was using his ERS, his battery system, heavily to try to keep up in those like lap 1 through 3 and completely drained it. Whereas Max did not. And then once he got, comfortably ahead. He just took off like Max does, and Leclerc had no DRS, no ERS, and you're just kind of floundering out there, and you know the P2 that you're going to hold.
Just watching that unfold took me back to Vegas, and it just made me think that Charles doesn't want to go through that again. What happened in turn 1?
Yeah,
and just try to drive a little more conservatively. But yeah, that would, with the way Ferrari has their season's been going, that would make sense to me.
Yeah. This again, I only started watching at the Zandvoort Grand Prix, the Dutch Grand Prix, but it seems like pretty much every race, lap 1, turn 1, has been nothing but just absolute chaos. Yeah. With if Max is not in pole, he's going to dive bomb whoever is in pole, and just it just ends up being a very, very big pressure cooker of potential for accidents.
Sure, but I mean, welcome to competitive anything.
This is also true. This is a very true statement. Speaking of people in the lead, can we talk about Yuki Tsunoda leading into lap 23?
My boy Yuki. Look, I know that it wasn't necessarily the car that got him to P1 for that long. It had more to do with the strategy they were going with. Right. But still, that was a beautiful moment for Yuki.
It really was.
And not just him, but I'll draw a blank on the name. The AlphaTauri's principal.
Franz Tost.
Yeah. For that to be his last race and to have his driver lead 23 laps, almost half the Grand Prix, was a really beautiful moment.
It really was. And I think Yuki's performance the back half of this year has been really, really good. It's been very consistent. Yes. And I think this was the final showcase for people to say, okay, we can't count this driver out. Right. He's definitely earned his spot at AlphaTauri, and I mean, obviously, there's a lot of debate about who's going to end up potentially taking the second seat at Red Bull, which we'll get into later. But if that conversation was realistic, I think Yuki's definitely put his name in the hat.
Like you said, he's consistent, and if he can stay consistent with a stronger car like a Red Bull, and stay at that consistent racing level, he could definitely shine.
Absolutely, and I would love to see him shine. He's kind of like we were saying about Ricardo. He's very much a personality.
He's very lovable.
He's very lovable. He's very much a character.
I don't think his racing engineers would agree with us. But
probably not. I'm pretty sure most race engineers would disagree with most of the things that their drivers do outside of the race. They'd just be like, this guy's a nut. Yeah. But no, Yuki definitely has a great persona, both on and off stage, or on and off course. It's just fun to watch them both. Yeah. Going further back into the race, let's talk about Checo Perez and Lando Norris bumping tires there on the middle half of that race, which ended up costing Perez the 5-second penalty. Yeah. I love how it happens. They go to Lando first, and Lando, what happened? He's like, oh, he just turned into me. Uh-huh. Okay. And then they go to Perez, and Perez says, oh, he just turned into me. I'm just like, one of y'all is lying.
Well, looking back at, it was almost laughable how many times they had to replay it just so the commentary box could try to figure out what happened. Right. But, yeah, it just, honestly, I would agree with the commentators saying that it looked more like a racing incident to me.
It really did.
I mean, I think Checo, I don't know whether it was just because of grip or because of him braking later, but he definitely did not turn in as much as maybe he could have. Sure. Again, that might have just been because he braked later. I don't know. But whether he was at that particular spot and angle or not, Lando definitely turned really sharp. Right. On that hairpin. Like, even from the out, like, if you were going from the out, the way he turned, you would have to be going from the outside of that hairpin into the inside. Right. And in order to do that, with a clear conscience, you wouldn't have checked your mirrors. Right. But he said that, that Perez just turned into me, so he knew he was there. Right. I'm not saying that he did it on purpose, but he definitely turned too sharp, in my opinion. Which, again, sounds like a racing incident.
So do you think the 5-second penalty was warranted then?
I do not.
I don't don't know. I think there's a few other drivers that were very grateful that he got it.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, I'm very sure. I'm sure Mercedes is very thankful right now.
Oh, absolutely.
But yeah, in my opinion, again looking at that replay and me and my inexperienced little brain, I think that either you should have penalized both of them or neither of them.
Right.
It just seemed too, I don't want to say unfair, but too imbalanced to only punish Checo and by a 5-second margin.
It did seem very arbitrary. Like, we're just like, we got to give out some sort of penalty for this. Give it to the Red Bull.
Right. And then follow up with him talking smack.
And getting summoned to the stewards.
Right. Yeah. I don't blame him.
No,
honestly.
I don't blame him. There's been a lot of that where the stewards have summoned team personnel over what they would consider derogatory comments. They summoned Toto Wolff and Fred Vasseur after the Vegas Grand Prix because they went on the news and were pretty much trash talking. And they got both handed a warning from the FIA. So
I mean, at what point do you have to look at all of these FIA summons and go, are you sure there's just not a chip on your shoulder?
Yeah.
I mean, people are going to say what's on their mind.
Sure.
And I just feel like if you have to watch everything you say to that level of scrutiny, then for one thing, you're going to take away some entertainment value from the sport. But you're also going to kill a lot of feedback.
Sure. Well, you kind of like you said, you could take away some of the entertainment feedback from it. Obviously, nobody wants Formula One to turn into WWE. We don't want someone running around with a chair, beating up on people as much as we would like to from time to time. But like you said, if you're censoring all commentary that's negative like that, you're going to miss out on feedback. You're going to miss out on ways to improve the sport. You're going to miss out on ways that teams will need to, drum up concern for big issues, and they're not going to have a valid way to do that, and it's just going to hurt the sport and the teams in the long run.
Yeah, exactly.
So, it's very tragic. The FIA's, putting the screws to people that are talking.
At the end of the day, it didn't change Checo's result for the season. He's got P2.
Sure.
Red Bull already has P1, so it's inconsequential to them. It was just more of a pride thing for Checo, I think.
Sure.
And again, I think that was pretty warranted.
Sure.
But it definitely affected the rest, or at least, P2 and P3 for constructors.
Sure, absolutely. And speaking of poor old P3 and the constructors, Ferrari, tell me your thoughts on Ferrari leaving Sainz back there, knowing he has to change tire compounds. He's got to meet that 2 tire compound requirement per race.
Yep.
And for those that aren't familiar with that rule, the FAA sporting guidelines require that you use 2 different compounds of tire in a Grand Prix. So you can't use hard tires the entire time or softs the entire time. You have to alternate to 2 different types of tires. Sainz went out and ran the entire race on hards, correct?
Yep.
And they just left him out there to finish the race on that same hard compound, hoping for a safety car.
Yeah, I wonder. Yeah, I don't understand. Did they start with hoping for a safety car, or did they just forget about Sainz and we're gonna hope for a safety car? Yeah, that's the idea.
Well, and to be fair, we've had pretty much a safety car every single Grand Prix.
We have, yeah, this is true, and especially with Abu Dhabi, with it being the last race of the year, it has a reputation for something happening that would call for a safety car. But I don't know. This just seems like putting all of your eggs in one basket, but you threw them into the basket a little too hard and they all broke.
Right. Well, and at some point, you also have to look at where Sainz was at in the pack and realize at some point he's dropping P15, P16. He's getting pretty far back there. Mm-hmm. Just go ahead and stop for tires. You're not gaining space.
Exactly. I mean, with mediums, you're probably going to improve a little bit to everybody else that's on hards.
You're going to improve a little bit. And if a safety car does come out, guess what? You get the chance to go jump up on top of all of them with fresher tires.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I think you're probably right. I think somebody just forgot he was there.
Which Again, I don't think that one was luck.
Yeah.
Or bad luck on the
Yeah.
or the Ferrari.
Ferrari needs to have a serious look at their strategy department going into this next year, because they certainly need the help if you're going to convince Sainz to hang around.
I thought Carlos and Charles were the strategy department for Ferrari.
Sure looked at that last race. The last 15 minutes of that race, you could definitely tell Leclerc was wearing the chief of strategy hat out there.
For real.
Speaking of strategies, thoughts on Toto telling Hamilton, "You're the fastest man on track" out there, when he very much was not the fastest man on track. Is this a psyop on the part of Mercedes, just trying to coax some speed?
I loved the awkward silence right after Toto said that. That was just, there's like Toto's message, and then there's an awkward silence, and then the whole commentary box was like, "Huh, okay, he just said that."
I mean, Hamilton can't prove it once he's in the car, but I went back yesterday and I actually looked at the timing sheets for the race, and pretty much Hamilton is in the middle of the pack. There's about eight or nine drivers that had faster regular times over him, especially towards the end of the race. He was not the fastest man on track. I'm just like, this has to be some Toto Wolff hype man thing.
Yeah, but between that and them basically telling Russell to mind your own business,
yes,
I think is just them trying to cover for Lewis.
I would agree.
And I'm not saying that Lewis has an ego. Every driver has an ego, but I do think they were trying to pander to him a little bit and say, "Yeah, you're doing great. Keep going." While I don't know if they're just trying to hang on to him for the next couple of seasons or what, but yeah, that sentence from Toto made no sense.
Do you think they're maybe scared about losing Hamilton after the whole Christian Horner interview thing where he said that Hamilton's people reached out to him?
Maybe. Even if it's not true, now people are talking about it.
Right.
So that conversation is now out there. It's an option. I don't think it'll happen. I don't think Max and Lewis would work well together.
No, and I honestly don't think that was Christian Horner's intent. I don't think he ever had any intent on signing Lewis to Red Bull.
It's probably a psyop.
But if he can convince Mercedes that Hamilton has at least asked the question about leaving, it just sends the Mercedes garage into a bit of a panic of, oh my gosh, what are we going to do if we lose our star driver?
Right. And Hamilton's performance, he's like past 2-3 Grand Prix, make me wonder if maybe he's losing it a little. He's definitely still a world-class driver, don't get me wrong, but George has been performing way better in these past few Grand Prix with the same car.
George has a fire under his butt chasing whoever's out in front.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And not only that, but he wants to work with Mercedes.
He absolutely does.
He really wants to work with that team, whereas, I don't know, it seems like Lewis is kind of being a little bit more of a lone wolf.
Just a little bit. I definitely get that vibe that he's just kind of like, I'm going to do my own thing. I don't like this car. I don't like how it's performing. Somebody bring me something better. And,
sure.
If somebody's willing to throw the amount of money around.
And look, I understand that your car is not winning Grand Prix because of Red Bull. But again, P2 and constructors, you were competitive with Ferrari, P3 the entire second half of the season.
Right.
So you can only blame the car so much.
Sure. And Russell's clearly making it work.
Yeah. I mean, if he had not crashed in Singapore, I don't think we would be having this conversation about Mercedes and Ferrari competing for P2.
I would agree. I think that would be a much different outcome.
So it's not the plane, it's the pilot.
Yeah. Which also brings us to the next point of Leclerc letting Perez just kind of blast past him there at the end in an attempt to try to fight for that P2 P3 split. It was Leclerc's last ditch effort. I think it was a smart move on Leclerc's part to at least try something at that late in the game, and with Sainz being out in the parking lot, basically. Yeah. It's your last ditch effort. You got to try something.
Sure, and with Charles realizing, even though it's Checo, it's still the RB19.
Right.
So being behind it, having DRS, being able to use slipstream a little bit was smart instead of having instead of trying to keep Checo behind him and driving defensively and losing time.
Sure.
So yeah, that made total sense. It wasn't Charles' fault at all. It just didn't work out.
It didn't work out. I feel like if they'd had maybe like 3 more laps, 2 or 3 more laps, you probably could have pulled that off.
Because that was on the last lap, right?
Second to last, I think, was when they got into position, and then at the start of lap 1, of the final lap,
it was their second lap. But yeah, Max was on his last lap.
Correct. Yes.
So yeah. Now that for me, that begs the question: if the 5-second penalty did not exist, what would Charles have done? He would have to drive defensively.
Yeah, he probably would have just held P2 and just sat up there.
Sure.
And just try to fight it for a lap.
He had enough time, I think.
I think so.
To keep, Checo behind him.
Sure.
Would Checo have caught up? Probably. Would he have passed him? Who knows?
Who knows? Probably not in a lap.
No,
I feel like
probably not in a lap. He would be close. He would be like Vegas close, I think.
Agreed. It would have been an interesting fight. It would have probably. It might have come down to like the Sao Paulo Grand Prix with Perez and Alonso doing that fight for the line, something along that line.
Speaking of, I think the FIA just announced that was like their overtake of the year or their finish of the year.
I saw that,
yeah.
And I absolutely agree with that. That was one of the best battles I've seen. Granted, my time of watching battles is about minuscule, but definitely I think the highlight of the season, at least for me.
Yeah, it was very
watching that in real
very
time.
enthralling, and I think it was Alonso himself said that that was one of his top 3 races throughout his whole career.
It is a long and storied career for that man.
For real,
that man has quite the legacy of.
I do want to see him dance on top of his car at least once in my lifetime.
Maybe this next year.
Yeah.
Maybe if they give him a good car and a better teammate, anything is possible.
I don't think he wants to retire anytime soon.
He doesn't seem inclined to, and then, given the results he's posting, he doesn't have a reason to.
Right? Yeah. He's still a limber dude.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Let the man drive.
Let him drive. I agree. All right, we're going to roll into our next segment, the forecast, where we are going to discuss what is upcoming on the Formula One calendar. Obviously, the 2024 season starts a little less than 100 days out, so that leaves us with the unofficial start of the Formula One calendar, which is winter testing, where the teams get to go out to the Bahrain Grand Prix a week early and begin field testing their cars on an actual track. The FIA sporting regulations dictate that every team doesn't get to test their cars on a track until this point. They're allowed to do wind tunnel tests. They're allowed to put them on dynos in the factories and all that kind of stuff, but they can't actually be road tested on an official FIA certified course until winter testing. So this will be the first time most of these cars get to actually see real pavement, real world conditions. The drivers get to actually put them through their paces for a grand total of a few laps out there. What are your thoughts on who do you think is going to probably have the biggest surprise coming out there?
Biggest surprise? Honestly, I think Williams is kind of, for the entire second half, almost even longer than the second half of the season, they've barely upgraded their car because they want to focus on 2024.
Right.
So I think it'll be at least interesting to see what they do. Whatever upgrades they throw into their new car could definitely shock some people, I think. But more than anything is going to come down to, the guys driving it. Logan Sargent has definitely improved from when he first started the season. So he could either do even better with an improved car, with a more upgraded car, or it could be too much for him. We'll just have to see. But yeah, my eyes are on Williams.
I think definitely Williams is definitely going to be someone to watch. Like you said, Sargent's improved. Alex Albon has just been an absolute force of nature last couple of races. Been putting just insane times down during qualifying, which have been really impressive to see. But yeah, I think if Williams does have something under wraps, I think it's definitely going to show itself in winter testing, and I think going to blow a lot of people away. I also feel the same way about McLaren. You don't have world-class drivers like Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris, and don't have them involved in the that design process, I think.
Sure.
I would say McLaren, they've already signed Mercedes engines, again, for the next several years.
2030, I think. Yeah.
2030, I believe, is correct. McLaren's CEO and team principal, Zach Brown, has literally not stopped signing sponsors for the last month. They just signed Monster Energy as their premier sponsor for this next year. That's a lot of money. Mm-hmm. So that means they are going to probably max out the cost cap for R&D for the new car, which was going to be very impressive.
I remember you and I were talking about how I wanted to see Monster show up somewhere on F1, so I'm glad that that's happening. They have a presence in pretty much every other motorsport you can think of. And I know that they're already a sponsor for Mercedes, but I don't know. I just want to see the Monster logo a little bigger on a car somewhere,
Sure. And we got to have another energy drink out there to compete with the penultimate Red Bull
sure
energy drink.
I mean, you could just take off all the American viewers and put Celsius out there somewhere.
Ooh. Hey, I like Celsius.
I do too. But I mean, Fahrenheit, Celsius, all that fun stuff.
Also true. Can't be having metric stuff to when you're appealing to the American.
What is a Coulomb?
I'm sure Logan Sargent is sick and tired of hearing.
I'm sure he is too. He looked done with it when a fan asked him about it at Austin.
I don't blame him.
Yeah.
So yeah, with winter testing, there's not really a whole lot to. It's all in the realm of fantasy, the art of the possible. Pretty much anything can happen out there during that.
If I may, really quick.
Shoot.
Logan. On the topic of Logan. He will need to really perform this season if he wants that seat. Because, I mean, he can't use the rookie excuse anymore.
Right.
And with postseason, Williams tested 2 other drivers.
Right.
So I can tell that James Valls wants Logan to grow and become a better driver and help Williams succeed. But he's also, keeping his options open. He's making sure that he has a full hand.
Sure.
So... yeah, this car combined with Logan's performance is probably going to make or break his career in F1.
I would agree. And I saw one statistic that was saying that the majority of the grid. So this is the first time in Formula One history that the grid will stay the same from one season to the next. Mm-hmm. But it also comes with the downside that the majority of the grid's contracts expire at the end of 2024. So what that I think that means is, like you said, with Sargent, everybody's going to have to perform very, very well the first, 8 to 10, 12 Grand Prix of the season. Otherwise, you're going to risk, in contract negotiations, being like, you haven't done anything for us this first half. We're going to go with one of these new rookie drivers that performed phenomenally at Abu Dhabi, because most teams have a very willing, capable candidate waiting in the wings.
They do, yeah.
So it's going to be very interesting to see who goes out there in winter testing, puts that car through its paces, who goes to the Bahrain GP and just absolutely kicks the door down. I also thought it was interesting that they put the Suzuka circuit higher up in the calendar this year.
Yeah.
It's like week 3 or 4
now,
as opposed to being in the back half of the season, which I think... personally, I think tracks like that are the most epic proving ground for a driver to prove what they're capable of.
They are, yeah. My biggest thing about that change is Japan is cold.
At that time of the year, yes.
Yeah. So
and wet.
That track is already rough as it is.
Yes.
So that's going to be a huge proving ground.
Yes.
For a lot of these drivers. And not just the drivers, but the cars too.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, that will definitely... be an interesting one. I'm curious how it'll compare to Vegas this year. To both temperature and track quality wise.
That will be very interesting to see.
Yeah.
Because that track also has one of the highest rates of tire degradation in the whole F1 calendar. And like I said, it's cold. It's generally rainy. Anything that can go wrong will go wrong out there. And I think definitely your lesser experienced drivers like your Logan Sargents, Oscar Piastris, that sort of thing will definitely have their work cut out for them going to Suzuka this year.
Sure. I know that, Suzuka has a reputation for deciding championships.
Yes.
So if I were a Japanese F1 fan, I would be a little disappointed that you're losing that this year. But I mean, I don't know. The change could be entertaining, could be interesting because of these temperature changes. But yeah, only one way to find out.
Yep, it'll be definitely one to tune in for and watch. Up next, we have what we are affectionately referring to as the tinfoil hat party. This is the meme-worthy section of this show, where we discuss all of the crazier shenanigans, things that are meme-worthy and or just humorous to us.
Which is half of F1.
It really is, especially in the Drive to Survive era, where every screen grab from that series has been turned into a meme.
Yeah, for real.
I had here on notes about talking about Logan Sargent's future with Williams, and as I was writing this out, literally like 10 minutes later, they signed him for the next year. So, so we have a full grid for the next year. So it's in the realm of conspiracy theories and just pie in the sky weirdness as it comes to F1. Who do you think is the driver most at risk of losing their seat midway through the season? Most at risk. Who do you think is going to have to work the hardest to hold that seat?
That's difficult to say without seeing the cars perform.
Sure.
But if we're just going to base them off of this past season, the cars from this last year, honestly, I think Daniel Ricciardo is going to have his work cut out for him because he doesn't have a lot of results from last season. Not as many as Yuki. And Liam Lawson performed very well with the time that he had. Was he, like, stellar? No, but he performed extremely well for a rookie that was thrown into the middle of a season. And Daniel, while we were saying that Yuki performed very consistently, Daniel has not quite as much. He was great in Mexico, but he's kind of balanced back and forth in the last couple of Grand Prix on the negative side of things. So I'll go with Ricciardo.
It's interesting you say that because I got a note here from Joe Sawad. He's a UK Formula One journalist, and I quote, "Informed sources suggest that there is a provision in Daniel Ricciardo's contract for him to switch into Red Bull Racing after the early races next year if Sergio Perez does not up his game."
Interesting.
He also adds that in this case, Ricciardo's salary would triple and Liam Lawson would replace him at AlphaTauri.
Huh.
So
that's a lot of stipulations flying around there.
There's a lot of stipulations. So to answer the same question I just asked you, I personally think Sergio Perez is the one to watch. I think I don't think he has performed poorly at Red Bull, all things considered. You don't reach P2 in the championship and not, be considered one of the great drivers of your time.
Sure.
But I think he is about to very much suffer from the same syndrome that Valtteri Bottas served with Hamilton, of just getting tired of playing second fiddle to a world champion, especially one like Max Verstappen. So I could see Perez leaving Red Bull, not because they're forcing him out, but because he's bored.
Okay. I've never really thought of that circumstance, but yeah, you're absolutely right. The expectations for Checo are higher because of Max.
Correct. And
like we both said, Checo can make that car work, but not the way Max can.
Right.
Like you said, P2 in Drivers' Championship. So he's competitive, but Max is just on a slightly different level.
Sure.
So, yeah, the expectations are higher, which are making Checo look worse.
Yes. And it doesn't really help that the press has really been feeding into that, making it seem like there's some sort of internal battle between Christian Horner and Checo, and it doesn't matter how often either of them go to the press and say, there's no problem, we're fine, everything's good.
Yeah.
The press is just taking that as a feeding frenzy of just hating Perez as much as possible, and I don't think that's fair.
Because honestly. Red Bull put something out recently, I think it was for the Mexican Grand Prix. There's a video they put on their YouTube channel talking about how much the Red Bull garage loves Checo.
Right.
He's just one of the guys, So, yeah, it's not going to be because of some internal breakdown. It's going to either come to a drastic reduction in performance on Checo's part, or it's going to be a personal decision.
Sure. And I mean, he's I mean, he's not been in the league as long as like Fernando Alonso or anything like that, but he has a established history in Formula One. He was with Racing Point, which was Aston Martin before Big Daddy Stroll bought him out. So I mean, he has a history with other teams. He could definitely, ping around and say, "Hey, I would like to entertain moving teams," and I'm sure plenty of teams out there would be willing to give him a shot. I could see somebody like a Haas or even an Alpine giving him a fair shot.
Yeah, because I think it was during FP1 where there was this conversation in the commentary box about how Haas does not like to work with rookies.
Right.
So yeah. If Checo really wants a huge change of scenery, just pop over to Haas.
They'd take him. I mean, don't get me wrong. I like Haas. I like Gunther Steiner. I like Nico Hülkenberg and Kevin Magnussen. They're funny guys, but they are just not working well together.
No, they're not. Yeah.
The Haas garage seems a very desolate place, devoid of hope. most GPs.
Yeah, I got nothing for that.
Yeah, I don't know what Haas has to do to solve that problem. You've got two drivers who I think are very capable. You've got team leadership that seems to know what they're doing. Maybe the car just is terrible. I don't.
Maybe it's the Ferrari engine behind the driver.
You shut your face. It's never the Ferrari engine. Never blame a Ferrari engine.
Of course not. So, speaking of memes, what do you think Georgia's new pose is going to be next year?
No more of the T pose.
No more boy band
like
pose.
The boy band pose. Honestly, I would love to see in the next season the exact same. Like, it's the exact same intro, but they each take each other's different poses. I want to see like Yuki doing the boy band T pose, and I want to see George Russell doing like the sleepy lean against the screen like Carlos Sainz does, or just something silly like that, or the big goofy grin like Daniel Ricciardo.
That's just Ricciardo, man.
That's just Ricciardo naturally.
Who would do the menacing like look up from Lewis?
Ooh. Esteban Ocon.
Yeah.
And he gets 5-second penalty for it.
I think if we're just going with what would be the funniest, I think Lando doing that would crack me up because he's not a serious guy.
He does not have a serious face.
Yeah, he has no serious face. So I think that would crack me up.
Neither does Oscar. Both McLaren drivers just look goofy, funny, like...
Yeah, they're just one of the guys. Yeah.
Absolutely one
of the guys. I would like to see Lando grow his hair out a little more for the promotion, though.
That's fair.
Yeah, just see how poofy we can get it.
Just this big mop.
Yes.
Or better yet, just like no names. They just show them up there and they're wearing their helmets, and all you get is the visor screens. You just got to figure out who it is by their eyes.
Dude, the number of F1 fans I could just tell.
That's true.
That'd be no contest.
F1 fans are slightly stalkerish.
Just a little.
Just a little bit. Now, I would also love to see each race get a different one, like a different intro. Because I was looking back at some of the other historic ones. There's been ones with like a Mexican mariachi intro. There was one that was like a K-pop one for the Korean Grand Prix, and that was actually really it was weird, but it was cool. Like it's different enough that I like it. There's a couple drivers in that intro that you can just tell are like super awkward, like Sebastian Vettel or Kimi Räikkönen.
Yeah, Kimi's awkward and everything. But
this is also true. He's a master of awkward. But yeah, it's just like I think it'd be really funny to do like, especially since all of the teams seem to like just love when they come to the Austin Grand Prix, decking out their entire team in the crazy ostentatious cowboy gear.
Yeah.
Like
bolo ties everywhere.
Bolo ties,
giant
hats,
belt buckles.
Big boots, all of it. Like, okay, if you're going to do that.
Just have Daniel Ricciardo consult all the teams in what to wear. He knows.
Fair.
He knows what to do.
But all I'm saying is I want a Western-style intro, Formula One driver intro, where they just, set it to Old Town Road, and they just all come walking onto the track with a horse.
I want to hear them, because you know how they did the mariachi version of the F1 theme for the Mexican GP? I want to hear that, but, like cowboy, like fiddles and banjos, something like that.
Absolutely.
Something just ridiculously American.
So if that's the ridiculous American version for the
or at least ridiculously Texan, which for the listeners at home, we are from Texas. That's why we're an hour north of Austin.
Yeah, and so we hold the USGP in Austin as very close and dear to our hearts. So if that was what you would do for the USGP, what would you do for like Miami?
Maybe something along the lines of Wipeout by Beach Boys.
There you go.
Something like that.
That'd be fun. And then Vegas?
Oh, just Elvis.
No. See, you gotta go like Frank Sinatra. Classy suits and fedoras.
Sure. Yeah. I don't know. If you did a New York GP, that could definitely work.
Ooh.
But I don't see that ever happening. Unless you go to like Watkins Glen or something like that. But
Watkins Glen needs to make a return to the Formula One calendar. Anyone from the FIA or Liberty Media or the Formula One group just happens to stumble upon this podcast, bring it back.
Yeah. Like I said, old NASCAR fan here, so the Glen has a special place in my heart.
I've never watched it myself, but I did. This is going to sound super nerdy, but I did race it on Forza Motorsports, the newest one that just released on Xbox Live. Yeah. And I was like, this track is awesome.
It's got everything in that track.
And the banks on that thing are just remarkable. Mm-hmm. That'd be very fun.
It's a clean track.
I want to see Watkins Glen. I want the old Nürburgring with the big parabolic banking turns. I want that to come back.
You like to live dangerously, huh?
I do. Hey, if we're going to make these cars the safest they've ever been with the halos on it and everything like that.
Sure, yeah.
Go faster, go ham, go big.
I'd like to see Laguna Seca pop up in the F1 calendar.
Have they ever raced F1 at Laguna Seca?
I don't recall. It wouldn't surprise me if they have, but like I said, baby F1 fan here, so.
Interesting. Because Laguna Seca is the ones that got the big up and the drop that's got like the corkscrew drop in it.
Yep.
That'd be
Which could be terror on the chassis of an F1 car.
Absolutely. Like FIA violations for plank wear.
Yeah.
Just dequalify the whole grid.
Those boards are going to be gone.
Oh, man. All right. Well, going into saved rounds, last bit here. Long shot predictions for drivers and constructor standings for 2024. Give me your top 3 drivers and top 3 constructors for 2024.
Top 3 drivers. Okay. I'm going to put Max at the top.
Of course
safe
you
bet.
are.
Safe bet, man.
Is it though?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a safe bet.
Okay.
Yeah. The Ferrari fanboy over here.
I have to cast doubt where I can.
Number 2 for Bahrain. Well, just starting out with Bahrain.
Because it starts out Bahrain, Jeddah, Melbourne, Suzuka, I think. So those are your first 4.
Yeah. I might go with George Russell.
Really?
Yeah.
Fascinating.
I'm trying to carry the momentum from the end of this season into the beginning of next season.
That's fair.
And with that, I'm probably going to put Lando Norris at number 3.
Okay. For me, I think I'm very similar. I'm putting Lando Norris at the top.
Yeah,
that man wants it.
He does want it.
He wants it as much as anybody else out there. And McLaren seems inclined to pay all of the money to give that man the best car possible.
Yeah, I can see that. Sure.
So I'm going to definitely go with Lando. And if you're going to take Max, then I'm going to take Charles Leclerc. Because that man also, nobody gets on pole position that often, without having some serious driving talent. Now we just got to work with strategy, I think, to get him to convert those.
Sure.
And give him a good car, and then.
I would also argue, you're probably not going to like me for saying this, but I think if he works on his starts a little more.
Also true.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the grid needs to work on their starts, honestly.
Yeah.
They seemed very poor. I mean, again, baby F1 fan here, only watched, Drive to Survive and half of the last F1 season. But it does seem they do seem very sluggish off the start, except for Verstappen.
Yeah, his reaction time is nutty.
Yes. So, yeah, definitely Norris and Leclerc. And honestly, I'm going to go with Alex Albon. That man has definitely surprised me in the last couple of races. He's qualified fantastically well.
Yeah.
If Williams can give that man a good car, that man is not someone to be ignored. I mean, he's also out of the same Red Bull Junior driving program that produced Max Verstappen and Carlos Sainz and all of these epic racers. The man has the knowledge. I think he just has to have a good car to do it, and I hope Williams can deliver on that this next year.
Yeah, I do too. Yeah, I want good things to happen for Williams.
Absolutely. So, drivers, check. What about constructors?
Well, I just put Max at the top, so we'll just go with Red Bull. Red Bull at number 1. I'm going to put McLaren at number 2. And I think I'll go Ferrari with number 3. I don't know. There's, like I said, momentum from the end of this past season. If Lewis doesn't pick that up and, push harder at the beginning of the next season, he's probably going to end up in the middle of the pack for a little while.
I would agree. And that's a dangerous place for a former world champion to sit for a long period of time.
Yeah. So I think if Lewis stays where he is right now, and as long as Sainz doesn't, crash again early on, and look, if Ferrari can keep their luck going good for the next couple of races, they can beat Lewis. They can beat Abu Dhabi's Lewis.
Agreed.
So.
Yeah, and it's very interesting because they're in contract negotiations with Sainz and Leclerc right now to get their contracts extended through 2024. So I think we're going to see the Sainz Leclerc party for at least another 2 years.
Which I'm fine with.
I am too. I think they're some of the better drivers that the Ferraris have had recently, and combined with the talent of the current Ferrari leadership, I think it's definitely a good place to be. So I'm also going to put Ferrari at my top because fanboy over here, yes. Resident Tifosi in the house. Number 2, I'm also going to go with McLaren. I think McLaren definitely has broken the shackles of the mid pack.
Oh, definitely.
Is definitely in contention of definitely taking Mercedes' spot away this next year.
They're not the same team that started at the beginning of 2023.
Absolutely agree. They learned something about halfway through the season and learned whatever that was, figured out how to use it, how to get the drivers involved, and how to stay consistent. And they're making fantastic strides there.
Yep. And
then for number 3, this is going to be kind of an out of left field one, but
don't say Alpine.
I was going to say Alpine. I think it's fascinating. I think a team is only run as good as its leadership is. With Red Bull, you've got Christian Horner, who is this, force of Formula One, been around forever, knows what he's doing. Same with Mercedes. You got Toto Wolff, knows what he's doing, been around forever. Alpine is a partially state-owned French team.
Right.
Basically it's Renault's sport division at this point. But they've had so many new backers buying shares of that team. I mean, we've got Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce and Rory McIlroy, Ryan Reynolds buying these things. That doesn't mean a whole lot. I mean, from a press perspective, what that tells me is there are now investors in this team that want to see a return on investment.
Sure.
And they're going to drive some demand for results.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think Alpine has had that. I think there's always been this is going to sound dumb. This should be under the tinfoil hat party. But I feel like when they were Renault, there was this shadowy French boardroom of Frenchmen that was just making decisions based on whatever they felt was good, whatever got them more wine and baguettes, perhaps. But now that they're Alpine, and all these outside investors are in there, they actually have to go win races now. And you've got some really good talent with Pierre Gasly, who knows what he's doing.
Sure.
Esteban Ocon, when he's not getting penalties, seems to know what he's doing.
Yeah. On that note, if there's a more competitive drive amongst Alpine, with the relationship that Ocon and Gasly have, it wouldn't surprise me if there's more incidents amongst the team and possibly even a driver change within the next season or two.
Yeah, because Ocon and Gasly don't seem to be getting along. They don't like each other. And I think if any of the two of them, if one of them was to go, it would be Ocon.
I agree.
Gasly is just a better driver.
Yeah, and he's more of a team player.
He is more of a team player. And, I mean, they're both Frenchmen, so...
as long as you have one Frenchman on the Alpine team, right?
Is that the rule?
It's I don't know. Maybe it's the principle of the matter.
Maybe it is.
Then again, you don't have an Italian on Ferrari, so I don't know.
How long has it been since there was an Italian on Ferrari?
Good question. Yeah, I'm not sure.
I'm gonna have to do some Googling on that one. Alrighty. Any other saved rounds? Anything you want to cover before we wrap it up?
I don't think so.
Awesome. Well, to all our listeners out there, thank you for tuning in. This is our first dry run at an episode of this, and
yeah, thank you.
It will be very, very fun to see what this looks like going into the 2024 F1 season. Thanks to all of our listeners. Please subscribe to this wherever you listen to. Leave us a review. It helps more than you know. And yeah, we appreciate it. That wraps up the episode. Thank you all for listening. I'm Jeff.
And I'm Matt.
Please be sure to follow us on all platforms, and we'll see you all next time. Pit strategy complete.